It was hard to digest. It still is, in a way that a call like that can decide such a big game, and what a great spectacle it was.
We got there from just having played, I think, here in Japan in 2017, and we were in the team meeting. He'd come down, I think, a couple of minutes late, and I think it was you. You said something about, "You're late, mate," and I think he was in a bad mood. And he walked in, he goes, and he stopped the team and he goes, "Listen here, I'm the fucking coach.
Yeah.
The meeting fucking starts when I turn up. So don't give me this bullshit about being late." And I remember thinking, "Bernard, what the fuck? What'd you do that for?"
The lead up to England, we played for 4 or 5 months. We weren't ever allowed to do a return play off the set piece back down the short side because they were setting that up to play England in that pool game. And so, you know, when we were playing the trial games, they said, even if you can go down and score, we don't want you to do it. Keep showing the same way. And you know, when that came off and that plan sort of came off in that game against England, it was incredible to see.
Welcome to another show, guys. Great to have you back, and Bernard, thanks for coming along. How are we all feeling today?
Good, looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I've waited for this for a long time.
It's good to see these fellas, eh? Gits has really let himself go since retirement, so.
It's not a good way to start, but
Well, let's hear a little bit about how you guys know each other.
I think the first time I met Nard was probably 2013. I'd played against him at the TARS, but is when you made your test debut in Argentina. Yeah, I think that was the first time I met him. I didn't know much about him before that, but you know, obviously I got to play with him for a number of years after that.
yeah, I think 2015 was the first time I met Nard when I came back from France to play for the Wallabies.
I changed the laws just to get you back, eh?
Yeah, they did that. Yeah, first time I met him 2015. Yeah, it was a bit of a low light.
First impressions not great?
No, not really. But like his eyes since then, he's really grown on me.
Beautiful blue eyes.
Aren't they?
Oh.
Obviously been over here now for a few years. How was it sort of first coming over here? You've been keeping a pretty good nick, evidently.
Trying to. It's great. You know, I really enjoyed my experience and my time here in Japan. You know, it was probably a daunting move at the time, but it always is when you're sort of moving overseas or going to new programs. But you know, really embraced the change. I sort of needed it leaving Australia, trying to freshen up and excited for a new challenge. And coming over here, yeah, I've really enjoyed the lifestyle and the experiences that rugby can give you. You know, living overseas or living in a place like Tokyo is something pretty special.
Yeah. And what has the rugby been like, especially for a number 10? You know, obviously quite quick game over here.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing the Japanese want to do is play with speed and play with ball movement. And, you know, as a 10, that's quite enjoyable. I think the style of the games, they are getting more physical and more set-piece orientated, but, you know, attack is probably still dominating the game, which is probably different to a few leagues around the world. So it's enjoyable to play, and the games are, well, across the whole code now, I think the teams are highly competitive, and it's pretty good standard.
Do you miss Super at all?
You do, you know, like I suppose playing through the Waratahs and playing in Australia with your friends and family coming to watch you is special. So you do miss a little bit of that and the anticipation of big games, because it's probably the one thing you don't get here in Japan is the big games are probably less frequent. So you do miss a little bit of that, but, you know, in saying that, I really enjoyed the challenge and coming over here and trying to fit into a new culture.
You're obviously part of a successful club with Kubota. What are some of the challenges that you've faced from a rugby perspective on the field that have been different to, say, your experiences in Super Rugby with the Waratahs?
One, the language barrier.
Yeah, that's the obvious one.
Yeah, it's a huge one. But I think you come over here and you get guys from South Africa, guys from New Zealand, you know, and the Japanese way. So you're all trying to find an identity as a team and how you want to play. And I think it's been a challenge, but it's also been enjoyable to sort of understand or to learn off these guys how they see the game and how they want to play the game. And, you know, you understand a lot more about them, about their identity and how what they try and do in situations. And so we've tried to build that sort of core where everyone gets to have an input and find an identity in terms of our team through our style of play. But, you know, I think the other thing is a lot of the high performance sort of goes out the window when you come here. You've got to try and all your superstitions and your routines sort of go out the window when you're used to playing evening matches and then you're playing games at 11:30, 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
And the standard's obviously been good enough such that you can get whisked back into that Wallabies team last year without too many hiccups.
Yeah, I did a season here back in 2015. I think across the board at all the programs, the influx of, I suppose, world-class coaches, world-class S&Cs and players have really improved the programs across the board now. So, there's not as big a step or level off between your S&C or your performance or your high performance.
So you spoke about you came to Japan in 2015. How much has the game grown over here since 2015 to now?
Yeah, massively. I suppose, coming after that World Cup and knowing I was going to probably be here for a short period, you probably, looking back on it, I was a bit disappointed I didn't invest as much time into the program or into the experience, the culture experience. But, coming in 2019, knowing that this is this is it now, this is it, you're coming here for good and this is your main reason, and you're not looking back home, you want to make this a winner. I think investing a lot more into the culture, into learning the language, being a part of the team, having a say in, how we're trying to run the team and just being invested, I suppose, means that, I think you give a lot more and you get a lot more back. I think, as I said, the standard of the competition is improved across the board. So there's not many easy games. So you still got to prepare like back home and do your...
Kintetsu's a bit of a gimme though, isn't it?
The captain's run?
Yeah.
You still got to do your prep. You got to do your analysis on your teams and also, keep growing your own team and keep going. What I really enjoy about coming to Japan is you're able to sort of teach the new kids and the young Japanese kids, and a lot of them are really eager to learn and they want to take that next step and want to be a good footy player. So it's great to have an involvement with those guys in terms of our team and to be able to see their growth is something that you get a lot of I suppose satisfaction out of.
Yeah.
And talk us through that call up you did get last year. What was that sort of process like? How did that come about?
Yeah, it was a bit out of the blue. I was actually on holidays in America for 3 weeks, which was having a good time. I was watching the game in the hotel actually when Quay got injured, and I was a bit dusty, and so I thought I'd better put my training gear on and went down and did a sweat session in the gym. That was the motivation. But I was in the middle of a holiday in America and. Had the chat with Renz and the staff back at the Wallabies, and it was always a thing that was on the radar. But when I'd seen the guys go back and do really well, I probably thought those guys would continue, and my opportunity probably closed a bit more. So to get that call up and get that opportunity was something really special. And I think having not been a part of it for a few years and thought it had probably passed by, that you could really savour it and go back and appreciate being back in that environment again. And I really, just take the games and see the opportunity and really appreciate the environment, but just how special those games can be when you haven't had it for a few years.
Were you nervous or worried if you're still at that standard? When you've not played Test footy for a while, getting the call up, was there still some doubts there?
Oh, massively. I think you do. You're never sure where your body's at, or even the style of play, and going in there, and even just going into such a new environment and meeting a lot of the guys for the first time, the coaches not having much to do with those guys ever before as well. So there's definitely that doubt and that whether you're still up for it, like you said, whether you still can perform or be in those arenas. And I think a lot of it came back to now is just trying to get my mental game right for those. It wasn't trying to do more on the field or try and do extra Ks. It was just trying to be in a really good headspace to try and nail the basics and do the simple things well, because that's what you can do for the team, I suppose, in driving around.
Is it different coming into the environment when obviously when you were at the Waratahs, you knew you were playing against your teammates, your eventual Wallabies teammates, but coming in last year, probably a lot of guys you hadn't had anything to do with?
Yeah, I think, the turnover in those 3-4 years was massive. There's only a few familiar faces with Slips and Nick White, and KB Curtley was around for a little bit that helped me as well. So it was like you're starting new again. You know, that you're going in and even getting the kit. You know, the
First day of school.
First day of school,
yeah.
like you those days you thought had gone when you had all your kit. And I'd
Free
probably
kit.
given away too much of my Wallaby stuff. So to get that new bag again was something pretty cool. And just to play home test matches or just the build up and the anticipation around games was something that you really got a thrill out of, a kick out of, that you realised that you had missed that. The build up, the preparation, the anticipation side of the game. So yeah, to go back was pretty special.
When you finished in 2019 to when you started again in 2022, had the game changed and moved or evolved compared to what it was when you last played?
Yeah, the big thing that I noticed, I suppose, going back to Test match was it's a lot more of a power game now. So it's a lot more explosive, intense efforts, but it wasn't as aerobically challenging because of the stoppages, because of, I suppose, game styles a little bit. There's less, maybe not as much ball in time play, and long periods of breaks or TMO checks and all that sort of thing. So I didn't find aerobically it was as challenging, but it's more of a power game now.
So talk us through the current crop of players. Like, you've obviously now got good knowledge of those guys having played with them. Where are the areas moving into a World Cup year that, I guess, as individuals and collective as a group, you need to improve to make a goal come World Cup? Yeah,
well, I still believe that the potential there is unbelievable. Like the skill level, the athleticism in this next bunch is pretty special. I think if a lot of the areas is just like you said, they just prepare themselves for test matches by doing the basics well, by continually working hard, working out their game, mastering their craft. And I think, we saw glimpses of it and being part of those games, especially in the European, the autumn series over in Europe, where we pushed the likes of France and Ireland, New Zealand as well, that these guys can match it with it. So a lot of them just believing that they can and they do belong in that arena, and also just, that real hunger and desire to want to be the best. I think that's something that our guys are learning, and I think if they nail that, they'd be a pretty incredible team.
Do you think rugby IQ is a big thing? Like, having guys like yourself and Quade having gone back, bringing that level of experience helps educate guys in certain situations, what type of calls, what type of plays they need to make, and what sort of situations they need to make sure they avoid or put themselves in? Yeah,
I think that's massive. I think the experience side of the game, and just the IQ, like you said, about knowing, how to play certain opposition, how to play in different scenarios or in different situations when you come from behind, or just even nailing the game plan. Like the rugby is such a game of intricacies, but you've got to bring everyone together. And I think we saw I suppose what experience can do when mixed with those young talent and those guys coming through. So yeah, definitely the IQ of our kids, because I think the modern day of kids, and I don't want to sound old, but they
Gits is old.
Yeah, well, I've got lucky. I've got
That's
Gits
why
here.
I'm nodding. I'm going, yeah.
Lucky I've got Gits here, but they don't watch as much footy as we used to in the past, so it's just not on as much. There's so many things now grabbing kids' attentions that they're not always obsessed with watching every game that happens over a weekend, or so. In terms of what they're seeing in their game or what they're seeing as a team and how we want to play, getting guys aligned in that and them then executing their role so the team works is something I think that these kids are still learning. And, I said that's a pretty exciting growth in them.
Well, I think that's where, when you've got those experienced guys, even if they're not playing, but they're in the squad, they still would prepare for training. You're stretching, triggering. Yeah. It's almost like that's where these younger players can learn and develop, even in a team meeting. If you see a picture, like say you're not there in the meeting and it's just young kids looking at this video, they might miss something that's so small but makes a big difference to the game. But having experienced guys in there that can notice stuff and teach kids along the way, I think that's where you're going to get that growth from these senior guys. And my view on where the Wallabies are at, exactly like you said, the tour was actually not a bad tour. No. By wins and losses, it didn't read well, but we're pushing number 1, number 2 in the world. It's just that consistency, I think, is the biggest problem. And with the young guys, if we can somehow get consistent, like you said, with the basics, you don't need to give a 10 out of 10 every game, but if we can consistently play at a 7, sometimes an 8, with the ability to build to an 8.5, 9. That's where I can see some real improvement, and where the Wallabies, if they can get that consistency, they've shown if you could kick the ball out in that penalty, we should have beaten New Zealand. No, well, I mean, the ref only told you about 40 times. But
I haven't lived in France, mate, so.
No, well, no, well, I could understand. But like something like that, like we should have beaten the All Blacks, pushing Ireland, had opportunities to win there, probably had an opportunity to close out the game against France. So we've shown that I think the Wallabies have the ability. It's just being able to do that consistently.
And consistency is what preparation, isn't it? And I suppose also expectation, like, you know, not living up or riding the highs and the lows, is just doing the same each week. And this is probably something that these kids are learning.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, Bledisloe.
Sorry?
How, I mean, you know, we all saw what happened there kind of thing, but you guys must have been understandably quite frustrated immediately after the whistle. Yeah,
it was hard to digest, I suppose. So it still is. In a way that a call like that can decide such a big game, and what a great spectacle it was in terms of a game. And I think what frustrates you more, you think back to it, is just the build up to the following week, when it meant the Bledisloe would have been on the line.
Yeah.
There would have been it would have meant there was 3 teams in terms of that rugby championship playing to win the rugby championship as well, with South Africa in Argentina. So I think that was the frustration, that we sort of didn't get a chance to compete. Not saying we were going to win it, but we still didn't get that chance to compete for a decider and to play it. You know, but I've got to come to peace with that, and at the end of the day, it's happened now, so we've got to accept it and move on. But yeah, at the time, it was pretty frustrating for a call like that, a decisive call to be made. You know, which I don't know.
Yeah, but imagine that's in a World Cup. Like you built 4 years. You've still got to have some type of feel on the game. I believe, like as a ref, like obviously I'm not trying to have a go, but if you have a feeling, you know that the game's quite tight. Okay, you need to hurry up. Look, if you don't kick, almost just say, if you don't kick now, I'm going to penalise you. Almost, you know, like have some type of feel for the game. So I was a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's what he yeah, and that's what I don't think the ref ever vocalised to me, was that you have to kick now, otherwise you're going to get caught.
Yeah,
you know, he told me the time's off and came to kick, so you know he never turned the time back on. So.
The interesting thing about the sequence is in the build-up. I think Marikas made a break and passed the ball to Pete Simon, who scored, and you kicked the conversion and you kicked it quickly. If you actually like watching from home, you hear the TMO comes in his ear and says, "Wait, we want to check the forward pass. We want to check the forward pass," and you end up kicking it quickly, and it's funny, the rules now aren't that that determines that he can't go back on his decision. He could have just said, "No, I want to check it." But once you kick that, he gave you this filthy look. It was hilarious.
Oh, you reckon it was hitting?
Yeah,
with him?
I feel like it was, because he gave you this filthy look, and then it's almost like it stayed in his psyche, and then it was a square up.
Yeah, I suppose there was a bit of commentary, back and forth through the whole game. There was a time probably just before the half time as well, where he was trying to make me, speed it up and kick the ball. So there was a bit of a dialogue happening both ways, and you hope it's not the case, but it wasn't like that. It is just a square up or a at-lib call to try and get back, because that's probably not in the rule.
No,
I think I was a terrible call. In terms of consistency,
I don't support Bernard, but I support the Wallabies. So I also.
I mean, I just think in terms of consistency, like whether it's right or wrong, I'm not going to debate. But if that's the case now, you've got to do that for every single. Well, you look at South Africa, for example, they take forever to kick the ball out. Yeah, and they stroll to the ball.
I just reckon through the language, my view is through the language, it's got to be a bit more desperate.
Yep.
You need to kick now, otherwise I'm going to say something like that, rather than just hurry on, hurry along. If I hear that, I'm just going to, what's called? Yep.
I suppose the silver lining is hopefully it becomes known as
the Nard law.
Yeah, the Nard law now. So now it goes, hopefully in the history of the game, it gets written down.
Well, they've brought in all the rules now. The shot clocks,
that's
kicking a goal, kicking in a touch, 30 seconds to get to a scrummer.
We've got the Giteau law, so maybe we can give
you can't get one.
Yeah, well, I'll push my hardest. We'll see how big this
see how this podcast goes. The Nard law.
Obviously, after that, you moved towards the European tour. You had a pretty long tour as well, and admittedly, you did have 3 losses on that tour, but what was sort of like the feeling within the camp at that stage? Were you still pretty positive about what was happening?
Oh, definitely. The cities were just alive. Rugby was alive, but the cities themselves, I don't know if it was post-COVID or good weather and stuff, the games were so well supported, the atmosphere in the games. And maybe it was just me, appreciating it more and taking and savouring it more. But it was just an exciting tour going to some of the greatest stadiums in world rugby, playing against some, the top 2, 3, 4 teams in the world. In a sort of 5-week tour is something you don't get all that opportunity often. So for me, it was really exciting to get over that and experience those cathedrals of again. And, like we said, we talk about the results. They could have easily have gone, we could have been 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, or we could have been, 1 or 0 out of 5. So it's probably what Gits was sort of talking about before, that consistency and really putting us in, if we look into the World Cup, you have to win 7 games in a row to win a World Cup, and we just did a tour of 5 weeks, and you have to be consistent each week over there. So it was a great sort of welcome back for me, but also for these kids who hadn't done a spring tour like that or an autumn tour like that because of COVID affected or bubbles and everything. A lot of the guys, their first experience like that. So it was really exciting to see, and that's one of the joys of rugby, is you get to play in these great cities and get that preparation.
Yeah, I think also with those games, the good thing for the young players is in most of those tests, I didn't see the Italy game, unfortunately, or fortunately, but they're in positions to win those games. So there'll be a couple of actions at the back end of the game that some of the players did, which kind of contributed to them losing that game. But there's big learnings to happen. And I think if you can do that a year out before the World Cup, and then come World Cup time, we're in this position where they've got an opportunity to close out a game. We now learn from our mistakes. So that's kind of the positive that I can see, that they can learn from that tour, but also that they had an opportunity to potentially, I don't know about the Italy game, you're always behind in that one way up. Whereas the other games, you always had an opportunity to really close them out and win.
Yeah, that was one they probably came from behind to give themselves an opportunity and missed it. And that was probably something that we took away from it, being competitive and knowing that you can put yourself in these positions. It was definitely made the tour a success if we take those learnings going forward.
Which young player would you say you'd be most excited about? Say you're not playing, which young kid excites you the most? Backline, forward, whatever, but Australian rugby.
Probably Mark, you say it?
Mwanga Nitawase.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think he's pretty intelligent and incredibly athletically gifted.
Yeah.
I think he could be probably like a once in a generational sort of player. But he's keen to get involved and get off his wing. That was the thing I sort of really enjoyed playing with him, or seeing him come in to the test match arena. He didn't just sort of hold it, and he went and got his hands dirty and worked.
He didn't look nervous at all, because I was over there doing some commentary work. So you're watching it right on the sideline, and I thought the same thing. A young kid, his first test, even like against Ireland. Oh, this is big. They're number 1 in the world. He's off his wing, mixing out his first touch. I think against Italy was like an offload. So he plays with a lot of freedom, which is rare and when someone's getting their first test.
Yeah, I think it's exciting that they've been able to lock in a few guys now. There's so many guys re-signing now for 4 years, for 5 years, the likes of Alan Alatoa, Angus Bell, like those guys, to Bobby Valentini. Like, he's exceptional as well. I think he's an incredible talent, does the hard work, just puts his head in places that no one else wants to.
That we don't do.
And do it week after week.
We've talked about, obviously, the most recent years. Let's jump right back to when it started. And Matt, you alluded to this. Sevens, you were that was sort of where you made a name for yourself first.
Yeah, I was incredibly lucky to do a couple of years of sevens. Sort of, I was picked just playing Colts in Sydney Club Rugby, and got an opportunity to join the sevens team, and that was just a great introduction to professional footy, or to the experience of travelling, to playing overseas in some great stadiums. Sevens was great for my game. It got you extremely fit. and it really honed in on the basic skills. You know, you have to run, pass, kick, and tackle, because if you don't, you can feel pretty isolated on a rugby field when there's only 7 people around you. So for me, I really enjoyed it. I think it helped my 15s game in terms of space awareness, creating space, how to manipulate defenders, and as I spoke about, honed in your basics. But just also your preparation and how you had to compete week in, week out. There's nothing harder than a back-to-back sort of sevens tournaments, getting your body up. Those back-to-back days, it's pretty sort of demanding physically. So that's something I really enjoyed, and did 2 years on the circuit, which was a great experience, and I think it helped me going back into 15s after those 2 years.
It used to be a feeder, like for us, so we would be academy in your Super Rugby Academy as a junior, then you'd go into sevens, and if you did well then, you would then push into Super Rugby. It was almost like that was the spoken kind of pathway. So you knew that if you did well at sevens, you'd go there. Whereas now, I think, as you're saying, they're two totally different sports almost. So it's not, I don't think it's a direct pathway anymore. You probably get picked up in sevens and you stay there, or you go down the 15s.
And Seven Circuit, you get to go to some pretty incredible places. You must have had some good nights out as well.
Was Vegas around then?
Yeah, we got the first 2 years of Vegas,
You're
which
kidding.
which was good. It was just the only thing you're there in the winter, so we'd stay at the Hard Rock, and they'd the whole time they'd have the loop on the TVs playing about their the summer pool parties and the gazebos, and all week it's playing. But it was because we were there in the winter, it didn't happen. But
Were any of the boys under 21?
we all were.
Yeah, see, that's the worst part.
And
So you can drink in Australia, but then as soon as you get to Vegas,
Well,
you would have stayed in your room.
Yeah, we stayed up. No, it was actually a good story. We were staying in one of the nightclubs there, and a lot of the boys literally were under 21. So I think we had Shorty Martin or Louis Holland. It was probably 17 at the time, and
Not naming names.
yeah, exactly. But so one of the guys, we told the doorman, no mate, no one's got ID. Our manager's got all our passports and our IDs. So he's like, "You're 21, aren't you?" Like, yeah. Just so we had to put the cash in the hand, go up and shake his hand, and he opened the door and he just said, "Don't buy anything on card because I'll ask for ID." So that's how we were.
Oh, right. So you just paid for cash.
Yeah, we just paid cash straight in. A bit eye-opening as a 20-year-old walking around Vegas.
21.
21.
Oh, yeah, sorry. 21.
You didn't get to the Olympics, though, did you?
Didn't get to the Olympics, no. I did a Commonwealth Games in 2010.
Yeah. Got a bronze?
Silver.
Silver, sorry.
Yeah.
And then celebrations.
In the
Didn't
Com
someone
Games.
throw an air conditioner off the balcony or something?
Yeah, I thought it was a fridge.
I thought it was James Stannard, wasn't it?
No,
I heard it was
Or was it you?
I heard it was you.
I think it was a different
There was
sport.
some- no.
I think it was a different sport, I think. That,
No.
yeah, allegedly there's
Where was it? Kuala Lumpur?
Allegedly.
India, New Delhi.
In New Delhi, yeah.
Yeah, even that experience, to go to a Commonwealth Games, you've done them.
Yeah. I mean, to play in a final would be unreal.
Yeah, and just to be a part of even a bigger team, being a part of the whole or the greater Australian team, and being in the athletes' village where you've got all these great, talented individual athletes and team players in one spot is pretty amazing. India was quite the experience when they had all the security concerns and threats, so you weren't able to do much, but it was great to be a part of that greater team.
And that's an example of a place that you wouldn't go if you were 15s.
No, exactly right. And even, on a night off, you go down to the aquatic centre and watch the swimmers, or you go to watch the hockey. It was just being that, being a part of a greater team and just getting around to these different disciplines, or eating in the food court, and just seeing the different body shapes and types coming in, and, it's pretty special.
Yeah, well, my one, it was in Australia, but we got called out of Super Rugby. So there were a couple of Super Rugby players that got picked to go play Commonwealth Games, but we were the first 3 days of the competition. So we went in, played those 3 days, and then we got out. We didn't get to experience anything.
Oh, really?
But the rest of the sevens guys got to hang around.
Yeah.
They didn't throw anything out the window, but they
Maybe
still
that's
had fun.
Yeah, well, we got put at the end, but I think, there was only a couple of days at the end to celebrate, so it was pretty quick.
And I mean, what was it like transitioning back to 15s? Was it a pretty seamless experience still?
No, there was definitely the challenges. I suppose kicking, goal kicking, something you hadn't done for sort of 2 years. And I suppose just the demands of 15, I had to do more in the gym and get bigger and stronger. to go back to 15s, but I enjoyed that getting picked up into the Super Rugby and playing that at that standard. Was a really good challenge, especially having a couple of years out. So it was different games, and as a 10, I suppose, going into a Super Rugby thing and being a young kid and sort of knowing that the expectation for the 10 is now that you've got to run the game was something that that it is tough as a young kid, because that's your expectation, but you got to know that's your role, and that was probably the challenge.
When did you make your Super Rugby debut?
So I played the last game of 2011. We had a number of injuries, which was Barnesy, Berwick Barnes, Daniel Halangahu, they all got injured. So I got called up, I think, just a week back from the sevens. It hadn't been really a part of the Waratahs because I'd been in a way of the sevens, and then they had a number of injuries, so got picked up to play in the semi-final.
You're kidding.
Over at Eden Park against Auckland in 2011, and played the last 8 minutes of the game. That was my debut, and got to go on a Mad Monday. It was great.
Straight back in.
8 minutes.
Costume?
It was a boat party, yeah.
Interesting.
So back into 2011, you make your debut. Then 12 and 13, you play. Obviously 14, the success of winning the Super Rugby title. Along the way to winning that Super Rugby title, was there a particular moment where you sort of realised like you belong at this level, where you thought to yourself, I can play at this level and I'm going to dominate at this level?
Yeah, definitely. I probably think the start of, or early on in that 2014 year, because there was a lot of chat with Kirtley coming back. So he'd gone away and playing at 10. So, I'd had a pretty good year in 13, and we'd sort of won half and lost half sort of as a team. But there was a real sense of something was growing and something special was happening at the Waratahs. And it was that competition still. Like I think Kirtley came out sort of wanting to play 10. So it was really for me that pre-season and that and getting a nod sort of to play 10 and KB went to 12. So that was a really exciting thing. And then I suppose early on in that year, I think we sort of won a few games, lost a few games, and then it sort of clicked and we got on a roll. So probably like through that time was when you sort of believed, okay, this is your position and to really try and, run the team.
Yeah. Czech was real big on those dual ball players as well, wasn't he? To be able to create like a lot. I know you like playing with a lot of passes in the game. So having the two ball players allowed him to have that ball movement and passes.
Yeah, and I think that it allows you to have width in your game, right? So for defences, you're keeping them guessing, you're able to pull them apart, but then also go through them. So I really enjoyed the ability to interchange there at 10 and 12, first, second receiver, where you can, have a different outlook on the game and see where, sort of step back a little bit and see where the space is to be able to, ignite the guys around you as well, or the guys on the edge, the back rowers, and those forward shapes that you can, manipulate to see what you're seeing. I remember doing it with you a bit too.
Yeah. Oh, you can attack both sides of the ruck too. So like if you carry on the left-hand side as a ball player, you can get up and see if any opportunities are available on the left while you're controlling the right. With combinations, Ryan Crotty, you play with him here. How's that going?
Well, the one thing is that when you play with other 10s, and then something that I've learnt with Crotch is the talk, the communication that you get on field, just how he's been exceptional to play with and learnt so much about what they try and do in New Zealand and how they see the game. But what his strengths was that he learnt, and he'll say it, is that he was never going to be the biggest, he's never going to be the fastest. So he had to learn that he had to speak and had to control the game through his voice and what he was saying. So he's been great for myself in terms of learning the game and just reading different pitches and different scenarios and what defences are doing. So to play alongside a guy like that with that wealth of knowledge has been great, and it's taught me a lot more of what you also can expect from your 12s when playing with you. The vision, the chat, and it allows you to focus on your game, knowing that you've got that voice in your ear that's controlling the next things, or is also your eyes, because as a 10 and really be the same. When your voice inside and outside of you is so distinct and clear, and you just have to execute whatever they're telling you. It's a pretty simple game.
Do you think that's an undervalued skill, particularly from the outside backs? Because, like, a lot of the times as a 10, you're the quarterback of the team. You're essentially calling all the plays, but you're also looking what's in front of you and what's inside you. you can't really see everything at one time. Do you think that's an undervalued skill from particularly the 12s and the outside backs that they need to work on?
Yeah, I think it's probably a lost art that, you know, we're not encouraging, we're not coaching enough. You know, what these guys should be seeing, what they're looking for, and then also coaching what their comms are. It's a team game, so everyone should be, there should be a line of communication coming in from the outside and from the inside, so that the whole team sort of is got the rights to make a call depending on what you're seeing in defences, or what the defence is giving you, or where the space is. So I think, yeah, what you're saying in terms of the communication piece and what guys are looking for, what we're coaching these young kids coming through to just to see the game and not be so robotic and so prescribed in their games, because the game is such a flowing game and the pitch is ever changing.
I think playing you guys earlier this year, like I remember when he come on, Crotty as an example, when he come on, I remember he didn't stop talking. But it wasn't that he just didn't stop talking. His communication was so specific. Whether he was communicating kicking space deep left or deep right, or play me early or pull back, we've got space on the outside. I remember I was so taken back, because it's somewhere I think, particularly in Australian rugby, we struggle with our outside backs, but he was exceptional at it. Yeah,
and he said to me once, if I don't give you a call every phase, I'm not doing my job. You know, and that is pretty. That's unreal for a 10 to hear, and it could be just as simple as you've got to carry. You know, like carry, or hit me short, play me on a drop, a snap. Was just that. Yeah, he's the one that, you know, being your eyes, being your voice for the rest of the team. And as I said, it just allows you as a 10 to get into position and then execute whatever he's demanding, which is, you know, as we speak about, that's a sign of great teams, when you can evolve, when you can see different pitches and unlock defences through that live check.
Who are the top communicators in the Wallabies at the moment, based on last year?
Nick White.
You can hear him through.
He's loud. He's loud. No, you know, I think that's the growth of these guys too, and guys, you know, working in and understanding the game and how you want to play, and then adding their voice and adding their flavour to it. You know, there's some incredibly talented guys there. Look at Landon Giteau, you know, Hunter Paisami. These guys have got, you know, they're the triple threats in their run, kick, pass abilities. It's just then how we can fit that into the team, and how we can you know, use their strengths to unlock whatever's in front of us.
What about yourself, Gits? I mean, I've always found that really interesting, asking individual players, like, was there any certain moment where you felt you belonged, whether it was at test level or super level, that then allowed you to obviously dominate and play with a level of confidence?
Yep, I know the exact moment, like from a test point of view.
Yep.
2004, we played England at Twickenham. So I debuted there 2002 and had a shocker. 2004, Stephen Larkham got injured the test before, so he stayed on to help do the game plan and whatever. Elton Flatley was at 10 and I was 12. Elton got injured very early in the game, playing Johnny at Twickenham, like where I made my debut. And then I went out, played well, got man of the match, and that was the first time that I felt, okay, I can now compete. And this was even after I did all the World Cup, played a few good games for the Wallabies, but still felt like a bit of an imposter. But then that one game, 2004, end of the year, that was the moment where I felt like, okay, well, I can actually compete at this level.
What was your moment, Will?
I remember, like, I'd started in 07, and it took me a couple of years, again, with the Reds to get to a point where I was like, oh, I belong at this level. I remember we played the Blues at North Harbour Stadium, and I felt like going into that game, I just had this feeling like of almost being, I hate the term, but being like in like a flow state type of thing. And when I got out into the field, I just felt like the game almost slowed down. And like I could see things and anticipate things before they were about to happen. It allowed me the freedom to make decisions that I wanted to make, as opposed to relying on people inside or outside me. And we ended up having a good win that game. And I just remember thinking to myself, I belong here. I feel like I can actually play well and play at a high level at this standard of footy. And it allowed me then, like later that year, I made my test debut in 2009. And so, yeah, I always find it really interesting seeing if that was when, you know, certain players, if they ever did feel that type of moment.
I reckon everyone has that moment where you're an imposter, you know?
Let's go to that 2014 Waratahs season, which obviously worked out pretty well for you guys. I mean, how did you, because only 2 years earlier, you were sort of towards the bottom of the table, mid-table the year before, and then champions.
Yeah, it was. You never know why teams get successful, and even the start of 2014, we were winning one, losing one. So we were sort of, I think we were 4-4 after 8 games, and then luckily we just went on a roll and everything got in sync. And I think a lot of it was there was a lot of good senior guys in that team. In terms of Stephen Hoyles came back, you had Wycliffe Parley, you had Dave Dennis. These guys are great team men and sort of understood how teams work. And then you had, young guys or guys to play. And I think just the identity of the team was we wanted to trying to keep playing attacking rugby and keep trying to inspire through our style. And, I don't know why it did, but we got on a roll, and it was a pretty amazing sort of journey to go on. And just to even be at the grand final at Homebush there in Australia and have 67,000 people all in blue. There was a few red for the Crusaders, unfortunately. I thought I weren't going to let them in. But, just to have...
Can't keep them out.
No, exactly. But just to have that, that many people there in that sea of blue and what it did for the game was pretty incredible.
When you name those names, that's a pretty special team too.
You forgot Adam Ashley Cooper too, who would be devastated.
You got yourself, Fipsy, Adam Ashley Cooper, Izzy Folau, Wycliffe.
Yeah, it was a stacked team.
Eject Potketer as well.
Yeah,
Potketer he was big for you guys, wasn't he?
He was awesome. And that's Czech's probably one of his greatest strengths was how he was able to identify the characters and what the team needed, and was able to get us all together. And Big Jarks was he was incredible for us in terms of he was one way and he did it 100%. Whenever he did it, could have been a touch footy on the Monday or the captain's run, but he was still running like he was coming off the back fence. And I think that wore off on the other forwards too, that they had to be more abrasive, they had to be more aggressive, and insert themselves more physically in the game.
And you kicked the winning goal to win it at the death. How many people did you tell over the next few days?
That was incredible too. The next few days, because we had to go into Wallaby camp on the Wednesday morning, and remember that was a tough bus trip for a few of us. I don't think Swoop or Adam Ashley Cooper said a word for about 3 days.
Yeah, he goes into a dark place after a few drinks.
He was probably MVP of the. He got man of the match on field, and then he got man of the match for the next 3 days. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. You were pretty close though, weren't you?
I tried. I was in the Sprinters jersey, I think, not the yellow jersey.
Just going back to the Waratahs during that sort of purple patch, you guys had obviously Czech was the coach there and then went on to the Wallabies as well. What was he like for you as a mentor and as a coach?
Yeah, I suppose he was great early on in terms of how he saw the game. I enjoyed his philosophies on the game to be attacking, to be inspirational, and also to not fear failure or close the game. I suppose one great example for Czech, I remember we'd lost and we tried to play too much footy, and it had been sort of a bit of a disaster, too many unforced errors. We'd let them in, they'd scored off us. And so then on the Monday, you sort of expect you go in and, the coach is going to tear shreds off you and really try and then probably restrict the game because you played one way. And Czech came in and said, stuff that, we're going even more. We're going to play even more attacking. And as a young 10 or a guy trying to cut your teeth, just having that coach and that mentality and just backing you to go out and play and knowing that that's what he wants to do allows you to be a bit more free flowing and to be a bit more aggressive in your mindset and to play that attacking rugby rather than feel you're constricted or that you've got to shorten and tighten up your game.
And he's honest too. Like he's a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve. So if he tells you something, he's not trying to cover up and make you feel good.
No.
Like when he says something, you kind of believe it. That's what I always liked about him, just because he's an honest coach. There's nothing worse than if you have a coach that'll drop you from the team, but then he'll say, you're doing everything right. It's just, we're just not going to go. Just keep doing what you're doing. Whereas he'll say, look, your defence is poor, that's why you're not picked. So you got something to work on.
Yeah, that's certainly something I appreciated about him. He was often painted in a different light in the media, wasn't he, based on, contrary to what he was actually like in person, I remember that one in Argentina where he's like spraying us and he's pointing at you on the chest.
Yeah.
But it often paints him in a light that isn't actually the type of person that he is, isn't he?
What happened in that Argentina one?
He come in and he said, you blokes are like, you're playing for Australia, this is absolutely embarrassing, like there's nothing I can say that's going to change anything from a game plan, you know what you're supposed to do, just go out there and fucking do it. But then he was pointing at Nard, but he wasn't pointing at him, he was pointing at the crest on his chest, saying you're playing for Australia.
I got a few texts after, are you right? Like, was he coming at you? But no. Yeah, it was it was more of a, remember who you're playing for, with the jersey and the crest on your chest, so.
We come out and we end up putting like 40 points on him.
Yeah.
And we won the game.
Yeah, we won it. But I think, being a part of, especially Czech when he came in early, like he was very emotional and used to really drive that passionate piece, which was great, and it used to rev up teams and get it. But I think he then learnt how he had to. It's probably not sustainable, those sprays and those things. You can't do that every week. You've got to find your way to inspire them. And yes, they're needed at certain stages, but it's not you're always going to do them.
Good guy to have a beer with.
Check.
He doesn't really drink much, does he?
He liked the whiskey at
wines,
late night, but
yeah.
Do you remember the story? Do you remember we were in Wales? I'll tell people the story. We got there from just having played, I think, here in Japan in 2017. And we were in the team meeting, and he'd come down, I think, a couple of minutes late. And I think it was you. You said something about, you're late, mate. And I think he was in a bad mood, and he walked in, and he stopped the team meeting. He goes, listen here, I'm the fucking coach.
Yeah.
The meeting fucking starts when I turn up. So don't give me this bullshit about being late. And I remember thinking, Nard, what the fuck? What'd you do that for?
Yeah, he had a few contradictions. His fashion sense was horrendous.
Oh, for someone that got into fashion.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He made all his money and done really well out of.
He was in logistics, though, in the fashion industry. It's not like he cared about the clothes.
Oh.
Yeah.
But then things like that, he'd make the whole team have a drink for milestones. He'd bring out the champagne or the whiskey or something when there was a child born or for guys' milestones. Remember the first one in Caloundra when you got back in 2015 where we all got together as a squad and we just got a text, be there at midnight. Remember, be down in the team room at midnight and everyone's like, what's this? This is going to be a military camp. Everyone came down in their swimmers and runners. It just with warm jacket or something as well. Yeah. And we got down there and there was just champagne bottles out. And he just had a toast and a mingle and went to bed.
Yeah. Yeah, he woke us up to have that and then we went back to sleep.
Probably couldn't sleep for a while because the anxiety was still high. But
who would be, out of all your coaches, who would be the one that you'd love to have who you'd enjoy having a beer with? Or would love a beer? Any coach that you've had?
Alan Gaffney.
Oh, yeah.
Big riff.
Yeah.
I had him in early days in the Waratahs. He enjoys a beer. Go around to his place, he's got just a beer fridge. It's a Riff's fridge. And it was just always stocked with about 6 types of beers. Stephen Larkin, when Barney came out.
Oh, yeah.
He was fun as Barney. He wasn't fun as Bernie.
No.
He's an all-time great as Barney.
Yeah, he's a bit of a pest.
Yeah.
I saw Barney after my 100 tests and I can't unsee it. I got that many photos and videos of him as well. You would have seen him plenty of times.
Yeah, lots. Yeah. Because he's so reserved, sober. So he's got to let it out at some point.
And Michael Checker, as a Waratahs coach and as a Wallabies coach, were there any changes there?
Early on, no. No, I thought he was great for both programs, in terms of what he implemented and the guys he got in to drive the game he wanted, but also, how he saw the game being played. And, for Czech, the Waratahs were always underachievers. He came in and were able to achieve just through his philosophies of the game, but also the expectation and what you had to do to earn that, earn the success that he saw. And I think 2015 as well, when he took over that Wallabies team, he did the same in terms of the guys he got involved with, getting Gits back, with getting Drew, and just their professionalism around the squad, but also how hard we had to work to get that success. I think for Czech, as he went on, he cared so much about the team, but he maybe the execution and the delivery of it was probably lost a little bit in terms of trying to reinvent himself and keep himself and how he saw the team winning rather than what was actually happening.
What was that 2015 World Cup like for you? Your first one, obviously. You had Gits come in with the new law and sort of create a bit of extra competition in that squad for you. I mean, you had some good number 10s you were battling with.
Oh, yeah, exactly right. And I think what Czech did, he just made it so competitive too. Everything was a competition, whether it was the fitness drills, running up hills in the middle of Sydney at Hyde Park, or on the field, and we were in our camps in the USA, and before the World Cup, everything was a competition, and that's what I enjoyed, having these guys like Gits come back, having Willie G, and for me, knowing it was the first World Cup, but there was also so much anticipation on the pool. I wasn't even thinking beyond that. It was just literally those first couple of games, and the preparation that went into that was something that I look back on and just see how much work went into it. For that England game, for the lead up, there's 3 or 4, and so we had England and then Wales, so 2 defining games about who goes through out of the pool of death that year. And the lead up to England, we played for 4 or 5 months. We weren't ever allowed to do a return play, like a 21 or 11 play where you go back down off a set piece, step back down the short side, because they were setting that up to play England in that pool game. And so, you know, when we're playing the trial games, they said, even if you can go down and score, we don't want you to do it. Keep showing the same way. And you know, when that came off and that plan sort of came off in that game against England, it was incredible to see, you know, when those plan comes off, and it was a pretty magical night. But you just know that how much hard work and how much went into that preparation-wise for those nights to occur. They don't just happen.
It also, for us, our first 2 plays, our first set plays, everything that we thought about and design worked. Very rarely do they work back to back. And we were able to put scoreboard pressure on England after they lost the game before against Wales. So automatically we're creating a bit of doubt with them. So that kind of worked in our favour that they lost to Wales the game before.
The other thing too, in the build-up, remember he'd always speak about when we're defending as a team, always think about Ben Youngs. He would always be saying, watch Youngs poking out around the corner, the 1, the 2 defender. So the preparation leading into that, like you said, was very well thought out and was happening months in advance. And I think that's why we were so well prepared and why we executed.
Yeah, the anticipation for that game was unbelievable. I remember where the team was staying in Westminster. They're driving out all the way out to Twickenham, and just the roads were just packed the whole way. The fan zones were overflowing. There was just the white jerseys everywhere, the scattered Wallaby jerseys. So it was a pretty incredible anticipation and build up to that game.
And the afterwards. Because I think that was their second loss. So
They were out after that.
well, I think pretty much, yeah.
I just remember the crowd going, when you scored your try,
It was very
the
quiet.
crowd went deathly silent. Because I've never actually been involved in a game where the build-up has been that intense. Like you're saying, the crowds like lining the streets as the bus comes in. And when I've got videos I was watching the other day when we sing the anthems, it was electric. I get goosebumps listening to the anthem. But then to go from that to then being deathly silent was incredible.
I think because they lost 2, so they knew that this was a game they had to win.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, you go week to week, our preparation, you just weren't looking too far ahead.
Yeah.
If anything, we probably got a little bit complacent with that Scotland game, potentially. Thought we had an easier run. Luckily, Iceman steps up.
The Iceman bailed us out.
And we go
You know the
through.
funny story about leading into that game? I used to sit next to you because it's the 9 and 10. And remember, Czech had the rule where you can wear headphones and listen to music as you come in, but then once he starts speaking, you after that meeting, you take it off. You hadn't taken yours off, and it went deathly silent because he's about to speak. And then coming out of sitting next to you, was, I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man.
Bit of fake confidence.
Yeah, and then I was like, this is like all good. And then you end up kicking that goal to win it at the end. I was like, he's the man, he's the man.
Well, the funny thing about that, I think I missed three from 4 in the first half. And I remember coming off and Chris Malone, the kicking coach, was there. And he's like, mate, you all right? Like, because I think Czech was trying to change or wanted to change, maybe bring the left foot out.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything.
But, yeah, so, you know, and then just speaking with him, go back to your process. And I remember that game too. Like, it was such an eerie game. It was sort of a game that we felt we were dominant, but yet we were behind. Like, especially when they scored that last try. They scored a couple of optimistic tries in a charge down off my foot, I forgot about. But and then an intercept towards the end, and then thinking that, you know, like we could be going home here. But I remember still even behind the post there, knowing that we'd have one chance, you know, whatever it's going to be. It might be a penalty, it might be a try, whatever. We'd get one more chance and we had to nail it.
Yeah. That was my 100th too, so.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know.
He still hasn't bought me a beer for it, eh?
He never pays for it.
Yep.
And, I mean, you guys obviously made it through that Scotland game and made it through the next. And what was that final like for you?
At the time, you don't really realise it's how the momentum of it and how big it was. And, you know, you get glimpses of what was happening back home and how much support we were getting in the game and the interest of it. But for us, it was... You know, it's a massive game, and being on this role that you prepare thinking you're only the one outcome as well. So all week it was such a good build up and exciting for this one game, and I think that's why after you feel so flat and dejected because you'd only sort of seen one outcome happening, which was really hard to take. You know, and that was probably the the disappointing thing, and just to know that, you know, we were beaten by a better side. They're a great side, but it was you know, we lose Gits early, we lose Kane Douglas with an ACL, so our line out sort of stops functioning. It was a game, but really proud. I remember of seeing it at the 50th minute or 60th minute. We were right back in it and challenging them there, and you know, but it was such an enjoyable experience, and you know, that I still remember that World Cup as such a highlight because of the journey we went on that started 4 or 5 months earlier, and the things you learned, and the roller coaster of it all too.
And 4 years later, 2019 World Cup over here, of course. What was that experience like for you?
Personally, probably wasn't at the same level, but you know, again, you came in, and probably that year we probably expected too much because we had been close in 15, that you sort of know, and the commentary was, oh, we know where we had to improve just to be that little bit better to win the final, right? Where it wasn't like we got to get better and just win every game and focus on every game. It was sort of a bit more of, okay, we've been close, so we're going to get that opportunity again. Now, how would we do it differently? So we probably, as a team, like the preparation was immense. I've probably been the best condition I've been in my life leading into that. But then the combinations and the work we'd done in terms of our game strategy, or having the plan B, having the plan C in our game, and how that's going to evolve and see that in a tournament style game was probably where we lacked. And I think it sort of showed when we went into a game, and we played some great games, but we also didn't find ways to win, which we had in 15.
I think also, you remember, 2016, 17 and 18, we played a certain way of rugby. And then 2019, at the start of that, remember, we changed the entire way of how we wanted to play. And then we had guys chopping and changing, particularly in the halves. And we weren't able to build consistency in how we wanted to play, but also combinations within that system of play. I think going back to what you're saying, we didn't have a plan B or a plan C. We didn't have the option to go to a contestable kicking game if we needed to really pressure or kick long or play field position in territory. So, yeah, that was a tough year. I sort of look back on that with a level of disappointment, you know, because I don't think we gave ourselves the best chance to be successful. Yeah,
so it was pretty disappointing World Cup as a team, but also personally, I probably only got the one game and didn't perform well. So, you know, then you know, you have those, not regret, but you're just disappointed about your last experience in that World Cup.
It's interesting you say that too, because the dynamic I felt of that group wasn't like 15. Like I remember 15, there was such a togetherness, like around how the team operated. I felt
any guy could sit with any person, like on the bus, or if you're waiting for training at gym, like everyone would mix quite well.
Yeah, I felt like,
I remember turning up and it seemed a bit kind of
19 was a bit cliquey, I thought.
Yeah,
because you had guys who disagreed with certain things around how the team was being run, how we played, and then guys who did agree with it. And I think that created, again, like cliques within the group.
Yeah.
And when you get that divide, particularly in a competition of such high level and high pressure, I don't think it gives you the best opportunity to perform.
Yeah. So what changed in 2019? Was it the change in the game plan? What was the catalyst behind sort of the difference?
We had Czech who, you know, his biggest strength was, this is how we're going to play, this is what we're going to do. But if not everyone believes in it, and you don't bring everyone along on the journey, then that's when the cracks sort of start to appear. And I think that was probably, you know, his biggest strength done over and over. It becomes a weakness, I suppose.
I think that's what I noticed. Was his biggest strength being, we're playing this way and changing the game style, but there were cracks within the group that didn't agree with it. And like you were saying, if you don't all buy in, once you start to face some sort of adversity, it falls apart. And I just remember, there were conversations around certain things that we were doing that people didn't agree with. And if you're not on the same page, it's not going to work.
And 2019 ended. Obviously, you'd already signed to play in Japan. How quickly after the World Cup did you come over here?
We had 4 weeks. 4 weeks at home, and then it was pack the bags and come over, and which, you know, again, was probably a good thing, because you're straight into this new environment, and because I'd probably underachieved and the World Cup hadn't gone the way you wanted it, I was pretty eager to come in, and knowing that I had to prove to everyone in Japan, and definitely your teammates, that you were a world-class player, or you could be an international level player, that it was probably a good thing that to come in and to really compete and enjoy experiences. I was lucky enough to come when I came, Dwayne Vermeulen at the team, he just won the World Cup. So very different experiences. He'd gone back to South Africa and had, done the tour and the full, around the whole country, and his experiences and how it had sort of united their nation, and the experiences they had got from it was just incredible. So to have him, and then like we said, Ryan Crotty, it was great. It was an exciting challenge to come in here and to forge a new way of playing, and to be in a new environment was probably a good thing for me at that time.
And coming over here, I mean, obviously a new challenge on the field, off the field, a bit of a challenge coming to a new environment as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the language barrier is something. Just even living in Japan, these guys know trying to go shopping and you're using Google Translate the whole time on the products or what you're actually buying. But that's, you've got to enjoy that. You can't get frustrated or want to bring home over here, because that's when you get frustrated. You've just got to accept that you're here now, and you've got to really enjoy the experience and add your part when you can. But you also you're coming into their city and their culture, and to really embrace that as well. And for me, it's been great to try and learn the language and try and understand why they do things the way they do.
How is your Japanese after a couple of years?
Yeah, shoto. Shoto no. Nah, it's growing. But the best thing I've learned about learning Japanese, it's so hard to learn it with a teacher and a textbook, right? Because you learn the most formal way, and then you try and speak it to the players, and a lot of them don't know what you're trying to say.
Okay.
So you learn more from them in the locker room, in the change room, about how to say it in the conversations, and how to get by.
What's sort of been your most unusual experiences over here?
Most unusual.
Away from Roppongi.
Oh, I remember being in a izakaya, not knowing how to order. You get the menu and it's all in Japanese and it's all written up and down. And literally just looking at the different foods that we're ordering around, I said, I'll take that one. And then literally eating it, getting this sashimi, red-looking sashimi, eating it, and then doing the Google Translate later was the horse sashimi. So
horse.
Yeah, that was a pretty unique experience, and
Taken time.
It's actually nice.
Yeah, it's all right. It's a bit gamey. On the menu was whale, so I didn't dive into that. Mate.
Yeah, I've had that horse. It's nice.
Yeah.
Having the yakiniku, it's like in this little sauce. It's delicious.
Might have to give it a go.
Yeah.
You pretty quickly made friends with your Japanese teammates?
Yeah, you do. I think, one of the things they do for you is have a welcome party whenever you come in. I came in and we were in camp in Okinawa to join the guys. So all of a sudden you've got 30 guys, and they're all pretty keen to have a beer and a chohai. And then things get pretty weird. But you just embrace it, don't you?
Yeah, they get weird real quick.
Yeah. Kick comes off and games started getting played. It's it's unique, but you enjoy that.
During COVID times, like people probably won't understand. Give us an insight into how the rules changed around how the teams had to operate so the competition could keep running.
Yeah, well, it's the first time in my life that rugby went from working from home. That I never thought that would ever happen. But in Japan it was quite strict, and one thing they did do well was keep the competition going. Disappointing because you weren't allowed to experience Japan as it normally is, and having borders shut, so there weren't many people coming in or out. But the programs week to week were pretty strict. You weren't able to see guys for 48 hours after a game, and then you'd have to test. So it's only testing Tuesday morning. You get your results back Tuesday night, and if that's all clear, then the team got together for the first time on a Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
And you'd done your Zoom review and previews on Zoom, and then if someone tested positive on the Tuesday, everyone would have to test again Wednesday, so you wouldn't get together till Thursday or Friday for a week. And it was just, you had to be adaptable. You had to.
It's a lot of alone time too, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it was just a different way to play footy, and sometimes the team off a little preparation were able to play really well, or it was great for the body and the mind. You went into games refreshed.
Tell us where we are with your contract at the moment.
Looking to stay up here, and I think it's going to be a pretty exciting place to play rugby the next few years. I think there's a lot of world-class players coming in, and the level's only going to keep improving. I think Japanese rugby's always been pretty keen to learn and get better, and the companies are sort of investing in that, and you're sort of seeing the growth of it. So it's an exciting time to play and to be here, and yeah, I'm enjoying it so far.
Awesome. Guys, that's about all we've got time for tonight.
Beautiful.
Bernard Foley, thank you very much for coming along.
Good on you,
Thank you
Bernard.
very much. Thanks for having me, lads.